Hey guys, how are you? I'm Martin from Yes, I'm a Designer. Really excited to be back on a live stream, and hopefully many of you will be able to join. Today I have something very exciting to share with you. I've been planning to do this as a video first, but then I thought it's best to have it as a live stream because it's something that we can talk about, and whoever is joining, I would love to see your ideas and suggestions and anything that you have to say about this topic. So as you probably know, I am really into illustration and particularly character illustration. I've done, and the same topic that I'm going to cover today, I've done a seminar on it at Adobe Max in LA last year, and it was great fun. We had loads of fun working on an actual character illustration live, but at the same time I was also trying to compress all the best techniques and ways of capturing and creating unique and engaging characters. So this is what I thought I'm going to share with you today and walk you through the 10 principles in a way that can help you to create engaging characters. And although I do illustrations myself, and I'm going to share a few of my work like processes with you today. So I have some time lapses that I recorded of my actual illustrations. I would like to share mainly the examples from the artists that I admire. So these are the work of my favorite illustrators that I collected here. So let me just get started straight away. And actually, before we just crack on, one thing I would like to ask from everyone whoever is watching already live is to please just let me know in the chat if the sound and the video is all good. And if there's any issues, again, just use the chat, please. So we want to make sure that everything is working fine. So by the way, one last thing, check this out. I'm wearing a really cool t-shirt from one of our friends, Aaron Lee, and this is actually something that he designed for us particularly. And if you like this design, you can actually find it in our merch section below the video. So there's other cool illustrations as well, and t-shirts from different artists that we work with and also that we are following, and we like their work basically, and we ask them to create illustrations for us. So I can see all good from the chat, and again, thanks for everyone who's joining live. If you're watching the recorded version, also thanks for checking the video out. Cool, so let's get started, guys. As I said, let me just share my screen. We have the 10 principles of character illustration. First of all, most important thing is that you always need to tell a story. We just really function that way. Everything is about telling a story. It's from the very old days of ancestors sitting near the fire, telling stories. Always the elders of the tribe would tell their experience hunting and all that stuff. And then obviously we learn things from stories. So we are looking for stories, and that's why movies and TV series in general and computer games are popular, especially the ones that has a good story. Now the same thing applies to illustration as well, especially with character illustration. You need to capture a character through already telling a story without any words or without any speech bubbles. You can actually get that right. And you can see here Ryniak. He's an amazing illustrator, and all of his characters, even though they are very simple, they immediately tell the story of the character. Like we can see this little guy here, obviously high on caffeine, eating the coffee bean, or this guy here, a dragon or a monster dressed as a T-Rex, I guess. It's just great fun. Again, we have another cool illustration from Mike Mack, the alien. And although there's again no speech or no text added to it, we can tell his intentions are not the best, or it's not a very friendly character. And on the other hand, we have this guy here from Abbott, and I don't know, this character definitely is not happy. It's a sad monster wearing cool socks and then having a friend trying to cheer him or her up. And that's again something we can see both of the examples on the right. Is usually easier to tell a story when you have two characters interacting. So not only that, but also by using the small little girl here from Galit Weisberg, we can see that the scale of the monster immediately is easy to recognize. Without the little girl, we wouldn't know whether this is a small lizard or it's actually a big dragon. But by having the girl there, even though it's a caricature and like the proportions of the girl is obviously not realistic, but we can still tell that the dragon is way bigger. So it's a fairly big monster. But still, the girl is telling the dragon off for doing something naughty or whatever that is. So we don't really get the story. We just get like a glimpse of something happening, something intriguing that is happening. So this is the key thing here. And that's why I put this in the first place. Because if you can capture a moment just by visually creating something, either with one single character or two characters, that's already going to help engage your viewers. And they will stop and think about what is actually happening here. What are these characters doing? All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the chat if you have anything to add to this or anything to ask about this. By the way, the names are included here so you can search them. I'm going to include links to all of these artists in the description at the end of the live stream, but it's very easy to find them and they have amazing portfolios on all kinds of different sites. So let's move on to our second page, shapes and lines. So we also call this shape language. So when you have when you're working with simple shapes like blocks, in this case, the characters on the left are very blocky. So they are mainly made of rectangles or squares. They usually tend to create characters that are very grounded and solid and slow moving, but strong and heavy. So if you're using shapes, and obviously these are quite exaggerated versions of that, they can really help you to get that straight away. Because when we look at a character, if it's obvious, like from the shapes, what type of character it is, it already helps, again, to tell the story and to get a sense of what this character is like, what it is, how is it moving, how it is behaving in general. So a cool example is this one here from Piper. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, or his name, I'm not 100% sure, but Cryptid Creations is the artist name. And the character is a really cool example of using triangles, which is most of the time is used for aggressive or dangerous characters, and it might be actually a friendly character, but still someone you don't want to mess with. So triangles are great because it's the sharp corners. That's usually something that we just are familiar with, and we know that we should avoid or be careful with. So that's definitely something that is a good example of that. Then we have the cute characters on the right. So both of these, again, same guys from the previous page, or same artists. We can see how circles and round shapes are great for capturing more cute and friendly characters. And of course, Chris's dragon is something that is taking that to a whole new level where literally everything is made of circles, including the arms, the little toes, the eyes, obviously eyes are usually round, but the whole shape is like there's not even a body, it's just a big round head. But it still works, you can still read the character, and that makes it really cool. Same applies here, so apart from the limbs, the legs and the arms, everything is really rounded and curvy and friendly and fluffy. So yeah, shape language, another very, very useful technique. And it's actually quite easy. Once you start using shapes in general for creating your characters, it's going to really help you to get an immediate impression of something or what the character is like. Even easier, or even more of an immediate reaction that you can get from viewers, is if you get your silhouette right. So this is the third thing, but maybe it's something that you need to already start with experimenting in the beginning when you are creating characters. So silhouettes, you can see that we have these very well-known and loved characters on the left. Pikachu, we have Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, and then we have Monsters Inc., 2 characters from that. These are immediately recognizable because their outlines are so well thought out and designed. So this is obviously something that didn't come at the first sketch for the illustrators. So every character that you see in animation films or cartoons or anywhere in computer games, they are the result of a process, a thinking process. So that's why usually they are called character design, because it's actually following these principles that I'm talking about and trying to apply them all together and really form something unique, something recognizable. And if you can get a character that has a recognizable silhouette, and everyone would know which character is that, then you've done a successful character design for sure. So silhouette is obviously something that will only show the outline and you don't actually see any details inside it. But sometimes if you're working on new characters and just coming up with ideas, you can cheat slightly by including these lines. Here on the right side from David, we have a few cool character illustrations, again just using silhouettes, but we have those white lines over the characters which help to define a few additional details, like adding the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and so on and so forth. So that's, you can think of it as a like silhouette 2.0, which has some indication of details but still relying mainly on the silhouette and the outlines. Okay, so I can see a funny comment. What is a Pokemon? Well, it's a good question. There's actually a movie coming out soon. The Pikachu Detective or something like that. Looks quite fun. So proportions and exaggeration is the next topic or next principle that I would mention. And this is again an obvious one. So all of the artists that you see here does an amazing job, but my personal favorite from these are from Maxime and Sam. So the zombie character in particular is just amazing how exaggerated all the limbs are. So we have really long and thin limbs, but especially the mouth is just like huge. And because of there is also a very strong perspective, we have foreshortening, so the leg or the foot is coming really close up to us, and then obviously everything else is further back. So that also just helps to exaggerate the proportions even more. So same thing with the crocodile character, which is like a bodybuilder crocodile, I guess, which has huge upper body, but compared to that it has very tiny legs. And it's important that when you are exaggerating and when you're playing with proportions, sometimes having contrast on certain areas will really help to emphasize that difference. So when you're thinking of something really muscly and strong, it's not just about making the legs small, but also making the hands small. Because obviously the hands are the extension of the arm. So if you want the arm to be really muscly, then making the hands tiny is going to really give that contrast and help to capture that unique aspect of the character. Cool. So hopefully that makes sense so far. So proportion and exaggeration. So it's important to learn in general proportions of the human body, and animal anatomy is also very important, especially if you want to draw monsters. But understanding the anatomy will help you to find the unique parts or unique aspects of their physical build, and then you can exaggerate those unique aspects of them. So again, that's just something that you will develop the more you draw from life or from references. So if you want to draw characters that are based on, let's say, animals like crocodiles in this case, it's good to do some studies first and then try to identify what parts of their body you can exaggerate or what parts of their body can be used well to express, again, what your character is like. All right, so let me move on to number 5, and this is actually almost the same what I mentioned before, but I wanted to make sure this has a separate slide, is the expression. Now, expression is, you can think about it as the first read that you get from viewers, because they, most of the time, if your character has a face, they will look at the face first. And even within the face, they will look at the eyes first. So in photography as well, that's a rule, that you want to make sure that the eyes are in focus. That's like a basic thing that as a photographer you would want to make sure and you capture the eyes in focus, because that's what we are drawn to, that's what we want to look into first. And it's a funny thing, because when you think about it in social interaction, looking in someone's eyes, especially if you don't know them, can be intimidating for both sides. So for the person who you stare into the eyes of, can also be like not taking that well. And for yourself as well, if you don't know someone, you wouldn't want to stare into their eyes. But when we look at images, we feel like we are free to do it, and that's the only real time that we can get away with it. So that's why we immediately look in the eyes. And of course, eyes can express emotions, feelings, again, characteristics of the person, their mood. So we are amazing. Our brain is brilliant in reading emotions, and eyes are probably the most expressive details of our face. So that's definitely something that we want to focus on when we are designing characters. Another interesting fact that I have for you, I just recently heard this, that when you normally just simply out and about every day, every second your eyes process 10 megabytes of information. So that's around 10 million kilobytes. 1 kilobyte, just so if you're not familiar with this, is a single yes or no question, or black or white if we are talking about pixel or digital images. So every second your eyes process 10 million kilobytes, but the brain only registers 16 kilobytes of that, meaning that's the only detail that it will be able to remember and store. So our eyes are just amazing, the power that our eyes have. And obviously everything in the modern world is getting more and more visual. We are staring at screens all the time. I'm surrounded by screens all the time. And of course, our eyes are just getting better and better. They are improving in understanding details. But this is something that is always with us. So coming back to what I was just starting to talk about, expressions are very, very important to get right. And again, exaggerate your expressions. So when you want to have someone happy, make them really happy, so super excited. And you've probably seen this again with YouTube videos. I also started doing it, but I'm not really a big fan of doing that. You know that the thumbnails of videos very often have someone showing emotions like being in shock, or I don't know, being scared, or being very happy. So these exaggerated expressions are great. And just think about emojis as well. We love using very expressive emojis to show how we feel or what we think. So yeah, when you do your characters, no matter what you do, make sure that you get the expressions right and exaggerate them. I love these ones from Nikolas Ilic, I think the way to pronounce his name. On the right, again, really fun expressions. Both the eyes and the mouth and just the proportions of the faces are just so funny. So let me move on to the next page. Posture and stance. So we covered already 5 examples. And actually, before I go any further, I just wanted to have a quick look at the chat. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to use the chat. I will try to keep an eye on it and respond while I do the presentation. So yeah, I can see, there's actually, one interesting comment here. Tim Burton also likes to exaggerate the proportions of his characters, and that's a very good example. Tim Burton is a director who really comes from animation. So he actually worked for Disney doing animations. He was working with the greats, drawing characters, the between stages mainly in the beginning. So the key illustrations were ready, and then he was the one filling in the gaps between them. But then obviously he developed into a very unique artist and creating amazing characters. So yes, his drawings are worth checking out if you are not familiar with them. If you only know his films, make sure you check out his illustrations because they are great examples. So thanks for bringing that up, Chloe. All right, anything to add, please use the chat. I love to have this interaction. That's why I'm doing the live stream. So let's move on to our number 6. So we have 5 more that I wanted to cover, and after that I'm going to show you a few time lapses. And actually I'm going to also tell you what next week is going to be about, and I will even show you a little bit of like teaser of what the next topic will be that we are going to cover. So posture and stance is again very similar to like expressing what the character is doing, but in this case it's the body language. So we talked about shape language. Body language is similar, but it's more about how the character is behaving or what it is actually currently doing. So my favorite one out of all of these is probably this one on the left, the cactus that is afraid of the balloon. I think it's an actual fear that some people have. It's called globophobia. And I'm not sure that word is used only for being afraid of balloons. I think it's being afraid of anything round. And that's quite funny because, I mean, it's sad if someone has that fear or phobia. But normally, as we already discussed in the shape language part, most people are attracted to rounder shapes. And I'll let you decide what type of round shapes you think of. But yeah, so just to come back to the cactus example, being a cactus and being afraid of something like a balloon is just, again, a contradiction, almost something unexpected, and that what makes the whole thing funny. So this is just going back again, telling a story. So the examples I'm showing here obviously are successful in many of these points that I'm going through. So when I look at this cactus, I'm not only looking at a successful posture, which shows being afraid of something, but also has a lot of other successful sides to it. So the next couple of characters here again has a very expressive stance and posture. And a good example once again here from Nikolas Ilic, this monster again, like a Yeti type of character, shouting or singing. I'm not really sure what he's doing, but he's very excited about it, or very on it in general. So whatever it's doing it properly. And not only the character's stance is telling us about what's going on, but even the trees are helping that direction. So the momentum of the whole illustration is helped by the background. And that is a very smart way of adding even more expressive like dynamism to your illustration. Here we have an illustration from one of my favorite artists, Max Grecke, and I'm actually going to show you another illustration from him separately. If you don't know him, I would highly recommend to check his work out. He's on ArtStation, and I can actually switch there quickly. Just going to show his ArtStation profile. So he has some brilliant work, and he does a lot of fan art on popular culture characters, computer games, and all kinds of things. So highly recommend to check his work out. He's just one of the best character illustrators out there, in my opinion. And yeah, so he's a master of getting the stance and the posture right. So highly recommend to check his work out. And then let's move on to number 7. I can see a question about how perspective can help about character design. That's actually something is coming up. I think it's actually on the next slide. I will talk about that. And there's another question, will this be available to watch back again? Of course, it's recorded, so if you missed anything, you will be able to watch the whole thing again. It should be available as soon after I finish the stream. All right, cool. So Shumi actually just jumped on to reply that. Let's move on to number 7, so scale. Now, this is what Abhishek was asking about perspective. So perspective can be used in many ways. So if you remember the zombie example with the foot coming close to us, that is also in a way perspective. So we have the details coming closer. Even if I just do this, you can see how my hands, obviously, I get much bigger than all the surroundings. So that is in a way perspective. And if I want to be, I don't know, having a character really expressive with the hands, like Spider-Man, for example, would normally have the hands closer to you because of the shooting the web and all that. That helps to tell the story again. But what I would say, I think in perspective, what's even more important is the scale of a character. Now, how can you tell the scale of a character if someone doesn't actually know what that character is? Like, for example, with this guy here on the left, it's just such an abstract character. I mean, the shape doesn't really tell us what it is. It's obviously a fantastical creature. It's not something that we really compare to any animal. So without the little bike that it is riding, we won't be able to tell whether it's big or small. Again, similarly to the little girl and the dragon in the beginning, when we were talking about telling a story, here an everyday object can help us to be able to define or tell what is the actual size of a character. So same thing with this guy here in the second one. We have the trees in the background, and the trees really help us see that this is a huge Yeti or monster or Bigfoot, whatever it is. It is really big, because the trees, although the trees can be further back in the background and we can't really tell how close this character is to us, but still we have a sense of depth in the image and the scale, that it must be quite a big monster anyway. The same thing here with the little girl, similar to the previous example, that we can tell that compared to the girl, the monster is quite big. And then even if you're just using monsters, in relation to each other, you can tell when something is smaller or bigger. So once again, if you use multiple characters, whether it's a human or multiple monsters, the relation between them can help to define the scale. All right, so let's move on to number 8. Colors obviously is a huge factor again in getting a character illustration right, because it really sets the mood again. So from Piper we have again a really cool character here. It's like an evil frog monster or swamp monster, and without showing much about the environment. So we have an indication of water and some plants like reed probably in the background, and this big leaf on the head. We won't be able to really tell exactly where this character is unless we have these very swampy green and blue colors. So the color, in this case, the color theme really gets the mood and the atmosphere in place. Similarly to that, we have this character here on the right, the Dracula or vampire character, who looks like a very sophisticated vampire. And how can I tell that? Well, first of all, I can see that it is very well dressed, but also what we talked about before is the posture and the stance. Having the hand out like that, a very sophisticated way of holding the glass, which actually has an eyeball inside it, but it doesn't matter. The character is still very elegant and just very sophisticated. So once again, it's that, but also the colors that tells more about the story. So if this character was more warmer in tones, so it was more red and yellow, then it wouldn't necessarily look like a vampire, even though it has the teeth, just a gentle indication of the teeth. Because it is more cooler tones, the purple and blue, it helps to get it right. So we feel like, okay, this must be at night or in a darker, shadier area. So colors can really set the mood for characters and environments in general. And one thing that is obviously used really a lot in animation films. If you ever look at the boards for the scenes and the color choices for scenes, a lot of animation films and even computer games would design the scenes based on the colors that will be used. And there will always be like a progression from warmer tones to cooler tones, then to more green or yellow tones, and so on and so forth. So really, the same applies to environments and characters. Just getting the colors right is very important. And I wanted to include an example here in the middle, this pirate character, which we actually seen another pirate character already. So if I just go back here, you can see this one, again, has really fun choice of colors. And this guy here has really funky colors. And of course, having these vivid colors make the character more, I don't know, funny or just unique. And of course, it's a different style as well, illustration style, to the other illustrations here. But you can see that having colors that are not realistic can also be a way to make a character more expressive and interesting. So learning how color work and light work in general, because lighting defines the colors of objects, learning how it works is important. But when you are starting to play around with the colors and creating unnatural colors almost, you can get things, again, interesting and unique. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So you can use colors that we are familiar with and get the mood right, or you can use colors that are just out of the ordinary, and you can achieve something more interesting with them as well. All right. So there was another question as well. How about multiple shapes in the same character's design? Is that effective? Well, yeah, definitely it's effective. We can see that this pirate character as well is not just made of a single shape or a single set of shapes. So we have here round shapes around the face. Then we have sharper shapes for the sword and also the legs. So it's of course you can combine shapes, and even the vampire here on the right has a combination of shapes. So you don't necessarily have to stick to one, let's say just rectangles or just circles. The ones that I showed you were extreme examples where it's really focused on certain shapes, but most characters would actually use combination of shapes. And the proportions of those shapes and the scale of them will really define how the character looks like. So let's move on. We have two more to go through. So this one is shading. So once you have colors in place, the next thing that we need to talk about is the shading. What we look at on a character is the shading. And the shading defines the form and the depth in general. So without shading, we have really flat two-dimensional forms. So once you start adding shading, you start to have more depth in them as well. And the reason I mention this because there are so many different ways that you can add shading, and you can be very simplistic like this one here, where we literally just have a single color that defines the details that are in light. It's a single color, no gradient, no shading at all, and another color on the arm and on the leg that defines that detail is a bit further back. So just simply by using two shades of red already defines form and depth. But of course, if you start to go down a bit more in a more like gradient type of shading where you have a transition from the lit to the shady parts of the character, that can be again a unique way and a bit more photorealistic rendering of a character. So they both serve the same purpose, but it will set the style of the illustration, how you are doing your shading. So there's so many different techniques, and this is also something that I'm planning to go into more depth in next week when we are going to do an illustration process, and I'm going to show you how I do shading most of the time with my characters. And the next one is also something I'm going to explain, how to do texture, another important detail. But yeah, just one more thing before we move on to the next page. You can see this one on the right is a very, very unique vector drawing style with the thick outlines and the particular type of shading where we have strong highlights and strong shading, but just very minimal. So we have the mid-tone values mainly covering the whole character, and we only have the highlights and the shading on the very edges. So this is quite cool. It's like street art, and graffiti would use this type of shading most of the time, but Chrono Breaker is an artist who does this really well with his vector illustrations. So moving on, the last page, and before we get into the time lapses that I wanted to show you, is texture. And texture is again yet another layer of expressive detail on top of the color and the shading. So we have some really cool examples here. Some of these artists you've already seen before, some of them are new. Once again, all of these names and the links to their work I'm going to include in the description later on, but if there is something that catches your eye, you can just search for it already and check their work out. But yeah, so we have texture as a final point that you should pay attention to. Now, you don't necessarily have to use texture in your artwork, so you can have it really clean and without any texture or textural quality. But when you choose to add texture, it can again set the mood and set the illustrative style as well. So when you have something like this here, it feels more like a painting or almost like a chalk drawing because of the background. And the same thing with this one here, again, feels a bit more like traditional painting. So these are things that usually are easiest if you use something like Photoshop or Procreate. It's a bit more tricky to do in Illustrator, but of course there are ways to get that right, and I'm going to show you this again in next week's video. So there are so many different ways of getting texture into vector illustrations, but I will show you a few different ways. Okay, so there's another interesting question. How to get inspiration to design your characters. So the best way I would say is to just look at examples in nature, to be honest, or just look at objects surrounding you. You can get inspiration from anything. Like, I love looking at rocks and cliffs and like big boulders, because they, to me, most of them look like some kind of character, so I can already imagine something in them. Or another good example is looking at clouds in general. They can also be abstract and helping you to come up with a unique proportion for a character. But of course, another great way is to look at art from other illustrators, or even just photographs in general. Look at animals. You can get some amazing ideas from animals that maybe are well known, or maybe animals that are not as known, like deep sea creatures have some amazing forms. So real life examples and simple objects are usually the inspiration for me, apart from obviously looking at other artists' work. All right, cool. So I can see some of you like these examples that I showed you. So now that we've seen these amazing artwork, let me show you something that I've done, which is not as amazing as these, but still hopefully you will find them useful. So let me switch to, actually before we do that, now I will show you one first, and then I'll show you another comparison example before we see the other time lapses. So this one is the one that we will be covering next week in next week's video. So I've done this illustration. I'm just going to stop it for a second. Again, for last year's Adobe Max presentation, and I recreated it live on that seminar. So this is something I started obviously off with a sketch, and you can actually see this process. So it's 3.5 minutes. I've done this in Procreate. I usually start working there and then take my work and finish in Illustrator, drawing the vector artwork. So let's just see this process. And mainly I'm showing this to you because I want you to see that I don't start with the final result. I have something vaguely in my head that I would like to achieve. But as you can see, the original artwork is not really close to what the final result will be. So once again, if I just pause here for a bit, we can see that I already start thinking about how to exaggerate this vampire or Dracula character. And what I chose to have as a very expressive and exaggerated detail is the nose. So instead of the teeth, I wanted to concentrate on the nose, make the nose really big. And again, upper body bigger and smaller legs, as that just to get an interesting shape there. You can see I started also at this point playing around with the expression. And first I thought that I will make the character really just grumpy and probably something bad happened, or the vampire couldn't get blood for a long time and it's just not feeling well at this point. And what I'm doing here is I'm searching for the proportions, and you can see I'm moving things around. I'm changing the what is it called, the coat, and I found a cool little detail here to add the shoulder pads and make them more like sharp. So again, shape language. So it is not extremely sharp. It has a little bit of roundness to it. So I don't want the character to look scary, or not too scary at least. I want it to look more funny, and it's more like a caricature really of this character. But at this point, I start to feel like you saw me trying to add some movement to it, because it feels still very static and quite boring, to be honest. So just standing there, not doing anything, it's not really getting the character right. I started to add a little bit of smile there, but that's not going to help too much to make this character interesting. So you will see what I'm going to do later on. I even started coloring at this point, and then I felt like, nah, even a funky color like a pink vampire won't make this work. So this is where the idea struck. I realized that I need something that this character will do that is unique, or something that really gets that character right. Remember, posture and stance. This is exactly the point where I start to think about that, or I realized this took around, at this point, probably 10-15 minutes. I'm into the illustration, maybe 20, not more than that. So I had the initial idea, but this is where I started to like what I'm doing, because I realized that the typical pose is very vampire-like. So let's just carry on moving forward. And I even put here on the left, just as a reference, the original version where there wasn't anything happening with the arm compared to the one on the right. And when I got the fingers, I realized that I wanted the fingers to be really long as well, and I will add like the nails, really sharp long nails as well. But I realized that because he's holding out the hand, it would be quite cool. I mean, what's the reason, apart from getting that pose, what's the reason why he's doing it? And then I thought, another little character would be cool here. Remember telling the story? So that's when the idea came that maybe I can have a little bat hanging there, like almost hanging on a branch. So that is what is exactly happening here. And this is when drawing from references and learning human and animal anatomy is useful, because you can draw these details even without looking at references. So I was just drawing these things from my head. Of course, professional illustrators would be much more successful in achieving things like that, and they would be much faster at getting these right. But still, I feel like it's not too bad. I'm quite happy how this turned out. And this is the point where I feel like the character is starting to work. So the proportions are good, the expressiveness is there, the exaggeration is there, both the ears and the nose. So we have the sharp triangular shapes in place, but we also have round shapes in there, and we have this fun little interaction between the bat and the vampire. I also decided to do very narrow, thin eyes, so it's a I don't know, it's a spooky, menacing look, but because there is a smirk, it also looks a bit like I don't know, it feels like, or at least to me, it feels like this vampire cares for the bat, or it's like a cute little pet that is playing with. So you can see this is the point where I got to the final color render. So I have the base colors right, so the color theme is there, the base colors are in place, and this is when I start to do shading. Now, I most of the time wouldn't do actually shading in Procreate. I would go at this point already into Illustrator, but I decided that I just wanted to quickly get some shading in place, and that's what you are going to see in this example. So I just refine a few details there, and then there's the shading. So you see, once I start adding highlights and shadows, especially here, if I go back a bit, just look at this example around the nose. If you concentrate on the nose, when I go further, see the cast shadow of the nose, how well it immediately defines the shape and the depth. So without that cast shadow, we can tell that the nose is in front of the sleeve that it's holding, but once the shadow is there, immediately it pops and immediately feel like it's three-dimensional. So see that two cast shadows there under the sleeve and on the sleeve itself from the nose is really important. And then if I just continue playing it, you will just see me adding more of these shadows in place. A little creases on the coat as well help to define it, highlights on the arm. So I'm always thinking of the light source coming from the top, and anything that is below is going to cast shadows. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm just adding more highlights here, some more details, and pretty much that's the end of it. Yeah, so just a few more last details here and there, and then that's the final result. So there's another interesting question. Actually, there's two questions coming up. So Alexandru is saying, even if the proportions are not normal, we still need to know basic anatomy before starting to create characters. And yes, I completely agree with that. Now, how much you know about anatomy is a hard one, because you can study anatomy for years and you will still struggle with details. I was on a lecture from an amazing lecture at BFX, Bournemouth Visual Effects workshop. It's Scott Eaton. He is probably one of the best artists currently to talk about anatomy, and I'm actually going to show his site because it's a brilliant concept that he came up with. I think it's Bodies in Motion. Hopefully I'm not ending up on a dodgy site, but it should be this one. Yeah, there you go. Scott Eaton's Bodies in Motion, and hopefully there won't be any naked images. So I'm not going to show this for too long because there can be some nudity here, but his site is brilliant because what he's doing is that he's a photographer as well, and he's capturing models or dancers and martial artists in motion. So what you can see is not just a single reference image to study the anatomy, but the whole movement together. So you can see, let's say, a jump sequence from the beginning when someone is getting ready, and then the actual jump and how they land. Or a martial artist's, I don't know, a round kick, for example. He has some really cool motions captured to very high quality, and some of the things you can actually look in different angles as well. So very cool site, highly recommend to check it out. He has a subscription where you can access everything, but even just without paying, if you just register, create an account, you still will have access to a lot of useful references there. So yeah, just coming back to the question, anatomy is a brilliant thing to learn and try to improve, but it shouldn't stop you. Not knowing anatomy or not being a master of anatomy shouldn't stop you from creating characters. By looking at references while you are doing your drawings, you will improve your anatomy anyway. So you will get better. The more you draw, the better you will get. And obviously, if you do serious studies of human and animal anatomy, your character designs will improve a lot. And just generally, drawing people is hard. It's complex. And here is another question which is very interesting about this. Abhishek is asking, what's my opinion about realistic and cartoony styles? Which one is more expressive? So that is very interesting to talk about, because I would say that there is a whole range in between those two. So you can have the caricature or cartoony characters, like let's say this one here, this little blue guy, and then you can have the much more realistic ones. So if we go back, Max has this orc, I guess it's an orc, it looks like an orc, looks much more realistic, but it is still not completely realistic, so it's still exaggerated. So I would call this semi-realistic. And as I said, there is a whole range in between the two, and I don't think there is a difference between which can be more expressive, because again, if we look at this guy here, it is extremely expressive, or the pirate can be also extremely expressive. With illustrative style, or as you say, cartoony characters, of course you have a bit more chance to create more exaggeration, but it doesn't mean that realism or semi-realism won't allow you to do that. So I don't think there is actually a difference in a way. It's whatever you feel is right for your character, or whatever style you are familiar with, or whatever you feel like is close to you. So I think you can achieve expressive characters in any style, even from a stick figure that can be very expressive if you draw it right. All right, cool. So let me move on to showing you another really cool thing. So we have here in Photoshop a comparison of 3 versions of the same 2 characters. Now, whoever is into gaming, well, I am, clearly. You have God of War, the most recent version of it, or recent episode, God of War 4, which was set in the Viking Scandinavian folklore. So we have the main 2 characters, obviously having the costume and details and objects related to that folklore, but that we can clearly see in the in-game characters. So on the left we see how they look in the game itself, but in the middle we have a version from Max Grecke, the artist I already mentioned to you before, who captured the characters in a really fun way. And the reason I'm showing this to you, because now that we talked about all of these principles, the 10 principles, you can see how he's basically applying everything at the same time. And that what makes him really an amazing artist. So you can see there's shape language here. There is stance, like how the boy is more fragile and not really sure of himself compared to the big guy here. We have obviously the stance being very heroic and just strong, and the proportions, small head, huge upper body, small feet, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go into details because we already discussed this, but you can see how all of the things that we talked about comes together. And when someone creates a successful character design like these, it really, all of the things that we talked about really helps to capture the personality and the story within their illustration. So that's the key. Try to think about all of the things that we went through and put most of those, or as much as you can, into your illustration. And of course, it's not going to work straight away. And maybe even if you just get 2 things right out of those 10 that we talked about, that's already great. Next time, maybe you will be able to pull off 3 or 4 or 5 from these principles that we talked about. And of course, this is not an extensive list. These are 10 things that I thought are most relevant, but of course there's so many other things that we could go into detail on, and other ways of improving character design. Another cool thing here on the right is another artist, another really cool digital artist, was inspired by Max's illustration. So this is again something that you asked me about inspiration, and you can see how these amazing artists are also getting inspired from each other's work. So we have an illustrator, Max Grecke, who was inspired from the original game art, so from the original game's characters, and then from his work, another artist, a 3D artist who is doing sculpts in ZBrush, again is getting inspired. So it's almost like a chain reaction in a way. And this is the way you should think about it. It's not really stealing, it's more like just a way of learning from someone and trying to take it to the next level or turn it into a different type of art. So inspiration is something that obviously can come from anywhere. But yeah, so you can see that each of these in their own way is an amazing artwork, but they all relate back to the original design. And the original design obviously is not also something brand new. It's also inspired by a lot of other things like history, folklore, Vikings, and all kinds of things. So there's nothing really new. Everything is just being inspired by something else. And usually it's the best to collect multiple inspirations and then try to merge them together to create something hopefully more unique or unusual, or just something successful in general. Okay, so this is really all I wanted to cover. It's almost an hour I've been talking, and I'm starting to ask for a drink now. But yeah, before we finish off, I wanted to see if there's any more questions from you guys, and also just as a reminder, next week, if you like the little illustration I've done with the vampire, that's something I'm going to show you next week in more detail. And if you watch the recording, or if you are still on the live stream, let me know what else would you be interested to see. Maybe some of the concepts that I talked about today, I can go into more detail, or if you liked my time lapse, I can show you more of those. And while I'm talking, I'm just going to put on another one, another fun little character. I'm thinking of doing this also as a full live stream session for our members. And that's, by the way, something that if you're not familiar with, it's we started this roughly a month ago, and you can join and become a member by clicking on the join button on our channel page, or I'm going to include a link as well in the description, so to make it easier. And whoever becomes a member can learn more from us, because we do longer live streams and going through full creative processes. So I am planning to do a full character illustration from start to finish on one of these members only live stream. So obviously I can go in more depth if I can spend 3-4 hours. And we've done the same thing last month when I've done the Red Dead Redemption style illustration on Clint Eastwood's reference photo. So if you missed that one, you can become a member and you can watch the full recording of that close to 3 hours long seminar or live stream. All right, so yeah, you can see this little guy coming together here at the same time. He's quite fun, and I just love how moody he is. But yeah, so let's see if there's any more questions. Cool. I can see that people enjoyed this. I'm really glad you guys could join me, and please share, like this video, and let others know about the channel in general. If they are interested in illustration, graphic design, this is hopefully a good place to learn about these things. And we are planning to invite other artists as well in the future, so it's not going to always be just me talking about these things. We have already a few cool guys like Aaron, who designed this t-shirt. So once again, just let me show you this again, because I love the artwork. He is going to come on a stream most likely in the near future, explaining his work, how he works and how he's creating art. So once again, thank you so much for everyone who joined today, and thanks for the comments, thanks for taking part in the live stream, and I will see you guys in the next one.